Hello, everybody. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Corrales Puntacana full show. That's right, 3 shows in one. We have a lot to cover in the span of roughly an hour. I'm sure it'll run over a little bit on time tonight, but research, data, and DFS all to cover this evening, so I don't want to waste too much time on an intro. But if you are in chat, throw out any questions that you have in terms of players, strategy for your lineups, and if you want to talk a little bit about the match play and how your team and lineups did day one, feel free to. But we are mainly here for the Corrales, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler, a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. In the description of the video, there are links to all of my social media. This is Twitter and Instagram, where I did post a quick little nugget on winners of the Corrales. There's only been 4 iterations, well, technically 5, but one of the Corrales Puntacanas was played in the fall, thanks to 2020 being the disaster that it was. So only 4 true iterations of the Corrales, so not a lot of pattern building, if you will. But I did post a couple of notes regarding the previous winners, a couple of things that all 4 of them have had in common. I posted that over to Twitter, and I will normally do so to Instagram. I've just been very busy and forgot to do it, quite honestly. But if you would like to see the research that I do every week, give me a follow at those places. Twitter is also where I place my betting card. I will be doing that tonight after the show for the Corrales, and my match play betting card was put up really late last evening for the match play. So if you want to see my betting cards week after week, give me a follow over at Twitter. And then the link to my Twitch channel is also in the description. This is where I do all of my in-depth research. It's much more laid back. Listen to some music and just dig into all of the data that we can get and dissect it this way and that way. I also do some baseball content over there, gaming, lots of other things. So if you are interested in non-golf content or a much more laid back but more in-depth view of the statistics, give me a follow over at Twitch. And then finally, we're live. Chat's open again, as I mentioned. Who are you thinking about playing this week in your DFS contests at the Corrales? Have you made any wagers? I certainly put in a couple myself earlier today. What are you looking forward to? Who are your pivots and fades and whatnot? And any questions that you have, throw them in chat. So let's get into it. Let's cover the entirety of the 2023 Corrales Puntacana. And we're going to start, as we normally do, with research over at the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. And I imagine the 3 parts are going to go fairly quickly, so I will try my best to cover each with as much detail as possible, all on a pretty strict timeline here. But the Corrales Puntacana Championship in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, on the eastern shore of the Dominican Republic. Corrales Golf Course is a very, very long par 72, measures to 7,670 yards. So we're going to look at a lot of long course metrics throughout the evening for the Corrales. The Stimp, as it is with majority of these Caribbean-style tournaments that have Paspalum or feature Paspalum, it is pretty darn slow, just because there is usually a lot of wind, and if the greens got sped up, it would be very difficult to maintain play. So generally some pretty slower greens, but a very, very long course, 7,670 yards. Corrales Golf Course was designed by Tom Fazio in 2010, so nothing to do with architect filters tonight for the Corrales in Fantasy National. As far as specifics for the course, average green size about 6,000 square feet, right around average for the PGA Tour. 50 acres of fairway, we will see that there is fairway for seemingly days compared to most PGA Tour courses here at Corrales. There is a lot of rough as well, but these fairways are very, very generous. They are large. They are easy to hit. The difficulty in the course comes with the length and the wind. Quite a few bunkers and 6 holes with water in play. I mentioned it already, but the greens and everywhere here at Corrales, in fact, is supreme paspalum. The fairways and then the rough, or what you want to call the rough, only about 2 inches. Not very deep, not very hard to play out of. And again, there's a lot of fairway here already. So that is a look at the Corrales in terms of a GCSA tournament fact sheet. We are going to move to Windfinder and see what the forecast looks like for Thursday and Friday. And you can see it is very, very consistent for Thursday and Friday, but a lot of wind. We're looking at mid-teens to maybe even approaching 20 miles an hour in terms of sustained and gusts in the Dominican Republic for the Corrales this week. And then Friday, much more of the same. I don't see anything much of an advantage whether you're looking at AM or PM splits. If you want to get technical, I mean, the afternoon wave tomorrow has, in the forecast, a couple of mile an hours of difference in wind. But I'm not factoring any, and I mean 0, AM/PM split into my consideration for players to use in lineups. Simply, if they are good in the wind, they're going to get a boost. If they are bad in the wind, they're going to get a downgrade. But this is fairly consistent with the conditions that we have seen historically at the Corrales. Lots of wind, sustained wind, not really gusty per se, just a lot of wind. We will keep that up in case there are more questions around the wind and whatnot, but again, no favor AM or PM. Let's go ahead and move on over to Fantasy National. And as I mentioned, with the amount of wind that is in the forecast usually at Corrales, and again for this week, I have set the filters already to moderate and windy and have set the timeline to start at the beginning of 2022. Darnell, good evening. Good to see you in chat. I know I talked to you just a little bit ago on social media, but thanks for jumping into chat and checking out the show this evening. It appears that I am now one up on you from last week when I took Tommy Fleetwood. I know you weren't very high on him, and he played very, very well. Not well enough to save my DFS, but well enough to get me one up on you. But hopefully your week has went well, and you are ready for some Corrales. But these are your top players in the wind since the start of 2022 in the field for the Corrales this week. You've got Scott Piercy, Adam Long, Cameron Percy, Emiliano Grillo, Thomas Detry, Patrick Rogers, Andrew Novak, Wyndham Clark, Austin Eckroat, and Mark Hubbard. So give these players a pretty significant boost. They have shown that they are consistently able to play in the wind. You keep on going down this list to maybe the top 25 or so here on your screen. Michael Kim, Bill Hawes, Aaron Badley, Taylor Pendrith. You'll see some players do not have a tee time. They have withdrawn. There's been roughly 10 or so field changes to the Corrales, so make sure you double check your lineups if you submitted them early. There's just way too many for me to cover all in one go. So make sure you double check your lineups, but anybody who does not have a tee time is withdrawn. But continue on down this list of players that have been good in the wind. Augusto Nunez, although it is only 4 rounds, so take that a little bit with a grain of salt. Sean O'Hare, Justin Lauer, Trevor Cohn. There's your top 20. You can look at the rest of the top 25 on your screen there. And at the other end of the spectrum, I would give these players a considerable downgrade with the amount of wind that is in the forecast. Ted Potter Jr., David Hearn, Matt Every, Harry Higgs, Jonas Blixt, Brandon Matthews, Brian Davis, Wesley Bryan, Max McGreevy, Jason Duffner, Dylan Wu, who is going to be very, very popular this week in DFS, and probably for good reason. He's been playing very, very well, but he has shown consistently that he is just not very good in the wind, so that is going to give me a lot of pause on him. Continuing on down this list here, Ryan Brim, Fabian Gomez, Martin Trainer, and so on down, as you can see on your screen there. So give these players a downgrade in your rankings and in your considerations when building lineups because of their lack of ability displayed so far in the wind, or lack of ability recently in the wind. But wind is only one of the two factors that we're going to be considering tonight. We're also going to be looking at long courses. Again, we just came back, or got here from the GCSA tournament fact sheet. 7,670 yard long course. Very, very long course. So we're going to be looking at some long course metrics as well. So give these players a boost in your rankings. These players have shown in a few less rounds, granted, but in the rounds that they have played long courses, they have shown they are able to handle it. Akshay Bhatia, Michael Kim, Wesley Bryan, Harry Hall, Carson Young, Sam Stevens, Matthias Schwab, Kevin Chappell, Ryan Gerard, Jeff Ogilvy, Thomas Detry, Aaron Baddeley, Chris Stroud, Cameron Percy. It's roughly your top 15 or so. Scroll on down. There you go for your top 25. A little bit further down, Chad Ramey, your defending champion here at the Corrales. Gusto Nunez, Gray Chalmers, Bill Haas again. So he was up there for the wind and for long courses. So there's a look at your top long course performers in the past 14 plus months. The other end of the spectrum, give these players a downgrade. Just like in the wind, these players have shown over however many rounds that they generally don't fare well on longer courses. Ted Potter Jr., Matt Wallace, Haram Silfa, Ben Crane, Brian Davis, MJ Duffy. Surprisingly, I would have thought he might have been a little better at long courses, but at least since the start of 2022, he has struggled on long courses. Matt Every, coming on down, Joel Damon, in 7 rounds since the beginning of 2022, has struggled on long courses. He was your champion in 2021 here at the Corrales. Some other names that might jump out to you: Sean O'Hare, Robert Garrigus, George McNeil, Dylan Wu again. So Dylan Wu was down here, down near the bottom in wind, and now for long courses. So that's giving you a lot of reason why I personally am not going to be advocating using Dylan Wu this week, but he is going to be pretty popular. So it gives you an idea on one player I'm fading this week. But there's a look at the wind and the long course best performers since the start of 2022. I'm going to bring this timeline in here to the beginning of 2023. I just want to look at a couple of different metrics here, and then we'll get into some specifics. Strokes gained approach, your top approach players since the start of this calendar year, very recently, the past 2+ months. Top approach players: Kevin Roy, Wyndham Clark, your tournament favorite, Scott Piercy, Ben Martin, Matt Wallace, Ryan Gerard, Akshay Bhatia, Ryan Moore, Eric Van Rooyen, and Nick Hardy are your top 10. So before we go too much further, let's take a look at the course breakdown in Fantasy National. And I do have the estimated proximity chart from Pro Visualizer handy as well. Because this is a tournament not in the continental U.S., we don't get shot link data, so there's no strokes gained off the tee, approach, putting metrics, or anything like that. All we get is birdies or better gained, scoring metrics, par 3s, 4s, and 5s, and whatnot. But you take a look at Corrales in terms of a scorecard view. First thing I like to do is go to the 9th and 10th most difficult holes, see where par falls. You see the 10th most difficult hole is almost at par, and then 11th is the same distance away from par under. So it would signify that it is slightly on the tougher end. It's actually a little bit on the easier end, but this is not an easy course, again, with the length and the wind. Now, you do have a very good, or two very good eagle chances in the par 5 4th and the par 5 7th, especially the par 5 7th, only 515 yards. Both of those play to a half a shot under par. But you have some pretty tough holes here. The toughest scoring to par is, and this is not a typo, the 265 yard par 3, 11th. You also have a 500 yard par 4 closing hole where you have to hit over the ocean to get to the fairway, and you're still left with a 200 plus yard approach shot in. A very difficult hole, and it plays uphill. So you've got some very difficult holes here as well. So some good scoring chances, some holes that will come up and absolutely give you bogeys very quickly. A good balance to Corrales. Hey, P, evening. I knew you were excited for the Corrales. Good to see you this evening. Glad you could make it into chat. I don't know if you played any match play. If you are, how are your lineups going? But otherwise, we are here for everything Corrales. You see here, that's the end of the scorecard. No strokes gained by shot type. Again, with no shot link, we don't have approach, off the tee, putting or anything. Strokes gained by hole by par. For the players that finish in the top 10, you see it is a very balanced mix between 3s, 4s, and 5s. So no hole type or hole by par is favored for players that finish in the top 10. And this is going to change drastically as you move up the leaderboard. Looking into the top 5s, you see par 3s really start to make some gains in relation to the par 4s and against, the average course on the PGA Tour. And then for the winners, the par 5s, you do have to score on them, especially the two on the front 9. They are the two easiest holes, your eagle chances and very, very good birdie chances. But the par 3s, almost a quarter of a shot per round for your winners on these par 3s. They are very, very important. And you look at the length of these par 3s, it'll be very, very clear where the length comes in this course. You've got a 240 yard par 3, the aforementioned very difficult 265 yard par 3, but the other two are long as well, 204 yards and 214 yards. Every single par 3 at the Corrales measures over 200 yards. So that's where a lot of the length of this course comes in. And the two back 9 par 5s, both are true traditional 3-shot par 5s. Yes, they do play easy, but you see they are not great eagle chances, 0.5% and even less. They are decent birdie chances, but they are true 3-shot holes, 623 and 626 yard par 5s. So an extremely long course. That's why the par 3s and the par 5s really take precedent here at Corrales. We move on down again with no approach shot distribution. I did my best in Pro Visualizer to give you all an idea. We'll go to that right after this. Hole composition, you see the par 3s split evenly, but every single one is over 200 yards. You have two that are over 225. Hey, Joey. Evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully you're ready for the Corrales. If you played some match play, how are your lineups going? But what are you looking forward to with the Corrales? If you made any wagers, who are you looking at? But thanks again for jumping in chat. We got looking like a big crowd tonight. Loving it. Two short par 4s, not drivable, but short par 4s, 350 to 4. 400 to 450 par 4s, 3 from 450 to 5, and then the closing 18th that says 501 on the scorecard. It actually really plays to about 520 or 530 since it plays uphill and you have to hit over the ocean. So a long par 4. And then the par 5s, you do have the very short one, 515. So one from 500 to 550, one from 550 to 6, and then both on the back 9 are above 600 yards in length. But even with the length, there are good scores here. You can see just under 20% birdies. You have about 15% bogeys. Doubles, they're out there. They can come and get you. And then you have the 2 holes on the front with decent eagle chances. So scoring does play a little bit on the easier side, but it is not deemed an easy tournament or easy course. Historic cut line, this will back that up. In the 4 years that the Corrales has happened in the spring, again, I mentioned in the intro that the Corrales did have a fall event in 2020, but that was due to 2020 being the disaster that it was. So really, I only consider 4 Corrales events, the ones that are held in the spring in the usual time in the PGA Tour schedule. Half of the time it's been at even par. You've had a -1 and you've had a -2. So nothing extraordinarily easy by any means. Right at average. It is on the easier side, but it is average. Driving accuracy, I mentioned this when going through the GCSA tournament fact sheet. These fairways are very easy to hit. They appear to stretch for miles, especially compared to most PGA Tour courses. Very, very forgiving in terms of the amount of fairway here. So with fairways not really mattering and the length of the course, that gives you an idea on one of the metrics or one of the statistics that I'm really focused on this week. Hopefully it comes to mind fairly quickly for you. Greens, just due to the sheer length of the course, these greens can be difficult to hit. Scrambling is not difficult here at all. The rough is not long. It is not difficult to play out of. Players that are having to scramble are generally pretty successful doing so. So there's a look at Corrales Golf Club in terms of a scorecard and what graphical view we can get. It is, at this point, I will bring up the first of what seemingly for me is about 10,000 spreadsheets I have up for you, or workbooks up for you. Let me zoom out here a little bit. Again, this is the estimated proximity per Pro Visualizer. You see that there are no approaches from 75 to 100. I went ahead and took the 2 par 5s and moved them into the 200 plus, since all of the pros will be going for those greens in 2 unless they just hit a terrible tee shot. Having said that, there are 2 legitimate par 5s here, the 2 par 5s on the back 9 that do require a 100 to 125 yard approach shot for your third shot. They are true traditional 3-shot par 5s. Long and can be difficult. They are not eagle chances by any means. So you have 5 that approaches that measure from 100 to 125, at least per Pro Visualizer. You have 3 from 125 to 150, 1 from 150 to 175, 2 from 175 to 2, and then the 18th hole demands a 200 plus yard approach, and then the 2 short par 5s I went ahead and put in here since the pros will be attacking those. So there's a look at what I think is a pretty realistic expectation in terms of approach shot lengths here at the Corrales. And because we have 2 3-shot par 5s and we have several short par 5s that measure from 350 to 4, I actually used a little bit of 100 to 125 procs. I don't know if it's going to be correct, so we'll cover that in the DFS Tactics portion, but that could be a bit of the mixed condition model that I get wrong, but I am putting a little bit of focus on 100 to 125 for that reason. I'm going to go ahead and close this one out so that way I don't have, I'll have only 17,000 spreadsheets open. So we'll come back here to Fantasy National. we'll take a look at some stats here. But first thing I want to do before that, let's go to the historic conditions. Last year, scoring was a little bit on the easier side, but it certainly had, its difficulty in round one. 2021 was all average. You've had anywhere from easy to even a few difficult rounds. So everything's a possibility here. That's why I'm not looking at anything in terms of scoring, in terms of filter. Not easy, not difficult, not average. It's just I am more concerned with course length because, well, the course is almost 7,700 yards. The greens have usually been average, which is a little bit surprising. Although the first two rounds last year they were slowed down to Velcro. Wind always generally a factor. I don't know what the cutoff is on Fantasy National for calm versus moderate. I just don't. I know windy, I think, is sustained winds at 17 plus, I believe is what that is. But wind always a factor, and we looked at Wind Finder earlier, and we saw that there's going to be wind this week as well. All right, with that, let's go ahead and take a look at a few of these metrics that we think that might be important. First thing, we're on Paspalum greens. There's not a lot of data in Fantasy National for Paspalum. In fact, I'm going to go back all the way to 2021 just to get enough rounds to make it statistically significant. And even then, you'll see there are quite a few players that just have not accrued stats on Paspalum. But for those that are in the field this week, your top putters on Paspalum have been Scott Brown, Hank Lebioda, Martin Trainer, Kelly Craft, Patrick Rogers, Wesley Bryan, Bill Hawes, Aaron Baddeley, Jonathan Bird, and D.A. Points. I will click on Scott Brown. He's got the most rounds. We'll see what these tournaments are. The Puerto Rico and the Corrales. The only measured rounds that we have are from the Mexico Open at Vedanta last summer. So take a lot of this with a grain of salt. It's only really 4 rounds, or even 2 if players miss the cut at Mexico. Most courses that have Paspalum don't have shot link because they're not in the continental U.S. The one course I can think of off the top of my head that is Paspalum in the continental U.S. still doesn't have shot link because it's an alternate course. It's at the RSM. It's the Plantation course. The main course at the RSM is the Seaside, but they also have the Plantation, which they use for Thursday and Friday before the cut's made. So not a lot of data here for Paspalum, but just in case you wanted to see some putting statistics on Paspalum, there you go. I'm not going to do a whole lot with that. In fact, I'm going to keep the long course filter on for the majority of this. But before we go through each of these, let's go to the comparison course and take a look at traditionally what has played out the best at the Corrales. You see, again, with no shot link, we don't have any strokes gained data. So we'll start with driving metrics. And you see last year, the Corrales distance didn't matter for players that finished in the top 30, but that is an awfully low outlier. You remove that, the Corrales becomes 44% more important in driving distance. And with fairways not mattering, meaning these fairways are so easy to hit, almost everybody's hitting them, you just need some distance. You just got to hit the ball far because the damn course is 7,700 yards. So I'm taking a long look at players with a lot of distance this week. Greens, actually pretty important as well. We saw that they are difficult to hit just due to the length of the course. And you see last year, this is a very low outlier. You remove that, it's at about 4% or a little bit more important than the average full field course. So greens will be a little bit of something, but mostly in driving distance. Scoring. Again, this is not an easy tournament. It's not difficult. These metrics have been very wild, very inconsistent. You see birdies anywhere from 2.38 to 3.88, so everywhere. Bogeys have been a little bit more consistent, but against other full field courses, it's actually the bogeys. It's the same number, but bogeys against other full field courses have been more important to avoid than gaining the birdies. So I'm going to be looking at bogeys this evening. Par threes, very important. We saw that throughout Fantasy National's graphical view for the top 10s, 5s, and winners. Very important, and you got a low outlier. Par threes are just extremely important, and you see the lengths here. No specific length. They're both, all four of them are just important, so a lot of emphasis on par threes. Par fours, okay, you had a pretty high outlier here. We saw that graphically that they kind of get mitigated. If there is a most important length, it's the 400, 450, and it's been very consistent. And then par fives, if there is a most important length, it's been the 600 to 650. I've just been kind of focused on par fives in general. But there's a quick look at the statistics surrounding Corrales, or the in-depth detail surrounding the Corrales. So with that, I'll come back to Fantasy National. I'll close this one out so I only have 15,000 spreadsheets open for you. And let's go through each of these page views very quickly. When we look at scoring, and again, I've got this set for long courses. I'm not doing anything with scoring relative to par, easy, difficult, or anything like that. We just know this course is long. I'm going to look at bogeys avoided. You could look at birdies. You could look at opportunities. But we just saw in Microsoft Excel that bogeys avoided looked to be the most important factor. So your top 10 bogey avoiders on long courses, and I need to bring this in, apologies, since the start of 2022. Those players have been Wesley Bryan, Sam Stevens, Aaron Baddeley, Jeff Ogilvy, Matthias Schwab, Thomas Detry, Akshay Bhatia, Hank Lebioda, Augusto Nunez, and Michael Kim. Again, if you want to look at birdies, Wesley Bryan, Sam Stevens, Jeff Ogilvy, and Akshay Bhatia are top 10 in both birdies and bogeys. I'm just more focused on the bogeys, and that's really all I'm focused for here this week. If it ends up being birdies, or even birdies are better, that's where I'll be weak. But that's just where I'm focused. I mentioned that we are going to be looking at some distance. So when a course has been long, your top driving distance players: Wyndham Clark, Brandon Matthews, Nikolai Højgaard, Kevin Chappell, Taylor Pendrith, Kyle Westmoreland, Ryan Brehm, Augusto Nunez, Patrick Rogers, and Matthias Schmid. You see, all of these guys are generally pretty bad at hitting fairways, but with the width of these fairways, the generosity of these fairways, not going to be too much of an issue unless they're hitting it so bad that it goes to the ocean. They should be all right. So I'm really focused on distance this week. I also think it's acceptable, or whatever word you want to use there, to look at some greens. Greens are difficult to hit here just because the course is long. So your top greens in regulation gained players when a course is long. Those players are Henrik Norlander, Austin Eckroat, Hank Lebioda, Carson Young, Harry Hall, Emiliano Grillo, Bryce Garnett, Matthias Schwab, Justin Lauer, Wesley Bryan, and John Rollins. And again, some of these players don't have a whole lot of rounds, so take it with a little bit of grain of salt. But generally, if a player has 10 rounds, I consider it about stable, or as stable as you can ask for when you have a small sample. So that's what I've been looking for, or at, in the fairways and greens view. I mentioned proximity. I've been looking at the 100 to 125 just because of the two true 3-shot par 5s and the amount of 350 to 400 par 4s here. So I will bring this timeline in. I want to see for proximity and par 3s, 4s, and 5s who's been good lately, recently. So from 100 to 125 yards, your top players from that range have been Kyle Westmoreland, Wyndham Clark, Brian Stewart, Camilo Villegas, Russell Knox, Sung Kang, Robert Garrigus, Hank Lebioda, Kevin Roy, and Jeff Ogilvy. Moving to par 3s, these are going to have a big importance this week. So your top, I just did par 3s. Thinking about it, I probably should have just looked at 200 to 200 plus. But your top par 3 performers since the start of this calendar year: Hank Lebioda, Thomas Detry, Nick Hardy, Eric Van Rooyen, Trevor Werblio, Sean O'Hare, Paul Haley, Kevin Roy, Ben Martin, Matt Wallace. You're looking for players who are good at both lengths of the longest, because every par 3 measures above 200, and very rarely do they come below 200. These are long par 3s. So pay extra attention to Hank Lebioda. Thomas Detry really struggles at the long par 3s, but he's very good at the 200 to 225. Nick Hardy is good at both. Sean O'Hare. Doug Ginn, 12th and 32nd, not bad. So those are your top performers at the 2 specific lengths of par 3s here at the Corrales. 200 to 225 and 225 plus. Par 4s. We saw that these were pretty mitigated in importance, so I don't have a lot in terms of percentage here. But your top par 4 performers: Aaron Baddeley, Ryan Gerard, Ben Martin, Thomas Detry, Batia, Derek Ernst, Dylan Wu, Carson Young, Piercy, and Wyndham Clark. And then we'll move to the par 5s. And again, I just did total par 5s, but they are going to have quite a bit of importance. So your top par 5 performers: Kevin Chappell, Wyndham Clark, Chris Stroud, Carl Yuan, Adam Long, Gusto Nunez, Wesley Bryan, Brent Grant, Patrick Rogers, and Dylan Wu. Let's take a look at last year's. Let's take a look at last year's mixed condition model. I apologize, I'm jumping around a little bit. Let's take a look at last year's mixed condition model. This was the tournament that I did the best at last year because I had Chad Ramey, and you see he was rated 37th, so not very high. I just happened to have him in a couple of lineups. He was 5% owned and he won. I was very high on Chad Ramey last year. I also used Ben Coles, who was pretty good last year. I used Thomas Detry, Kramer Hickok. I just had the right lineup. This is the one and only podium finish DFS that I've had in a GPP. So let's take a look at what I did last year for the Corrales. 20% strokes gained approach seems a little bit heavy, although when we don't have strokes gained data, this is my default. I backed off of this a little bit this year, but 20% approach. Again, this is 15% I'm getting back, but you can see the emphasis I put on long courses. I had 15% in greens, considering the course was long. I figured they were going to be difficult to hit. We'll see that it didn't really perform all that well. 15% in par 3s, very, very important. And that's not going to change this year. I did have 10% in par 4s, 10% in par 5s. That's another 5% I'm getting back. I used moderate and windy. I have 5% in Paspalum. Okay, it's another 5% I'm getting back. And then I did split out the 400 to 450 par 4s last year. Now, if I were to sort on the leaderboard from last year, and I did that earlier to gain these stats, for the players that finished in the top 21, I believe I cut it off at the top 21 just for ties. You see the approach, a 43, decent. Surprisingly, strokes gained total on long courses wasn't all that predictive. 49. Greens was a 46. It wasn't great. But look at the par 3 number there. 36. That's a very low number. That means it was very, very predictive. Of the players who finished in the top 21, and again, I know this isn't sorted, but You take a look at somebody like Vegas, Lipsky, Stewart, Lauer, etc. here, those players, par threes were very predictive of success. Par fours, not so much. Par fives were kind of middling, just worse than strokes gained approach. Surprisingly, the best metric was wind. Strokes gained total in the wind. That was the most predictive metric last year. Paspalum was okay as well. And then the 400-450 was not very predictive at all, especially since this is a smaller-ish field. Only about 120 players last year. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I had last year. It was not the best that I've ever had because I did have 7 missed cuts in my top 20, and the winner wasn't in there. But I did have a good showing because I found some gems. David Lipsky was a 10% owned, just very middling. Brian Stewart was less than 9% projected owned and finished in the top 10. I was very high on him. Justin Lauer, 3% owned, top 15. I happened to have a lineup with Ramey and Smalley. So a little bit of luck, but that's what it takes in DFS. So we're hoping that we are going to repeat the success with a bit more of a successful predictive model. So with that, now I'll go to my mixed condition model for this year and see what I've done different and what I adjusted. So last year I had 20% in strokes gained approach. This year, 15%. Instead of strokes gained total on Paspalum, I just used putting on Paspalum, but 5%. So that could be good. It could be bad. It might not matter. We don't have a lot of data on Paspalum. It just is what it is. 10% in bogeys avoided on long courses. I did not do anything with scoring last year in terms of birdies. Birdies are better, bogeys. So this could be another faulty metric, or it could be the secret to unlocking the consistent performing metric or mixed condition model. But 10% in bogeys avoided on long courses, 15% in driving distance. Again, I've talked about it quite a bit tonight. These fairways are generous, so if everybody's able to hit fairways, just give me the bombers. 15% in distance, 10% in greens, 5% in 100 to 125 proximity. This, again, might be a bit of a sketchy metric to use. This is just kind of a hunch, so that could be another weakness. 15% in par threes. We saw how predictive they were last year. So 15% in par threes. I did keep the 10% in par fours and the 5% in par fours 400 to 450, even though they weren't very predictive. I think last year was a bit of an outlier. And then 10% in par fives. That is what I have in terms of a mixed condition model for the Corrales this year. We'll move to my rankings and enter the true DFS portion of the show. My rankings for the Corrales this week. My number 1 player, Wyndham Clark. Thomas Detry, second, Ben Martin, Akshay Bhatia, Hank Leviota, Sam Stevens, Dylan Wu, Kevin Chappell, Michael Kim, and Ryan Gerard are my top 10. However, if you were here for a lot of the beginning of the show, you know that I'm pretty off of Dylan Wu. Again, this is just looking at from an analytics standpoint. Other than Dylan Wu, I don't really have a problem here with this set of 10. Wyndham Clark, the favorite, should be. I'm very high on Thomas Detry. Ben Martin's been playing fantastic golf lately. Bhatia, Leviota is a little bit perhaps surprising, but you see the bogey avoidance, number 1 in par threes and how important they are here at the Corrales. Good in approach, so yeah. All right, so let me sort this on the pricing. We'll run through the price board But before I do that, the reason why I say that I'm not very high on Dylan Wu, there are two things that we know about the Corrales. It's a very long course, and the wind is going to be a factor. And if you remember at the very beginning of the show, I had you all look at the top players in wind and top players on long courses. So what I've done, I have this off to the side here. For anybody who has played 10 rounds, and again, that's kind of just an arbitrary cutoff. That's where I consider it to start being stable. For any player who has played at least 10 rounds when it's windy and when it's long, it has to have both. There are 9 players who have gained strokes both in the wind and in long courses. Those players in no particular order, well, actually they're alphabetical order: Aaron Baddeley, Ben Martin, Bryce Garnett, your winner in 2018 here, Cameron Percy, Hank Lebiota, Michael Kim, Scott Piercy, Taylor Pendrith, and Wyndham Clark. Again, to reiterate, those 9 players have had 10 rounds since the start of 2022 in windy conditions and on long courses, and they have gained in both of them. They've gained strokes in both of them. They are the only 9 players that have done so in the field this week that has all that criteria with it. So I wanted to make you aware of that. You'll notice that Dylan Wu wasn't in that 9. In fact, Dylan Wu is negative in both of those. He's negative in wind and on long courses. That's why I'm pretty out on Dylan Wu. Anyway, let's come back to the price board here. Let's start going over that, and I will tell you how I feel and where I think some values are. In the 10Ks, we have 2 players now that Stefan Jaeger is withdrawn. Wyndham Clark and Joel Damon. Well, one player is rated number 1 in my rankings, and one player is almost outside the top 100. It tells you what I'm doing if I'm in the 10Ks. Joel Damon has played this event very, very well. He's averaged a top 10 finish in his 3 years. However, he did withdraw last year from this event, and that's not getting factored into this. Joel Damon has not been playing well lately, especially since the start of the calendar year. Not a lot of distance. His par 3 performance has been shit. He's not avoided bogeys. I will full fade Joel Damon, and I will lose to Joel Damon. I will eat all of this chalk on Wyndham Clark. I would not be surprised if he's 30 to 35% owned. I don't care. He's the best player in the field, in my opinion. I'm going to use him. I think he wins, even though he's the favorite. So I'll use Wyndham Clark. I want no part of Joel Damon. In the 9Ks, we have Taylor Pendrith, Thomas Detry, Ben Martin, Matt Wallace, Eric Van Rooyen, and Patrick Rogers. Thomas Detry. Love Thomas Detry this week. I love Ben Martin this week, as I've been generally pretty darn high on Ben Martin for a little while now, and he's starting to play pretty well. He finished runner-up, or maybe he was tied for 4th last year here at the Corrales when Chad Ramey won. Ben Martin 4th in this field in iron play, 11th in par 3s. That sounds like a very good combination for Corrales. Now, he doesn't have the distance, but what he is lacking in distance, you will notice that he makes up for in his proximity, in his putting on paspalum for what it's worth, and he's also 12th on those short par 4s. So he's very good with wedge in his hand. So I like Ben Martin a lot this week. Matt Wallace getting a whole lot of love for very good reason. Like Ben Martin, the same exact 4th and 11th in the approach and the par 3. But I'm actually off of Matt Wallace. He has not played well on long courses at all. At all. So I don't want really any part of Matt Wallace. And you can see that here. He just doesn't have a lot of length. Even though he has the distance, like he's 108th at avoiding bogeys on long courses. He's 109th at hitting greens on long courses. He's not very good on long courses. So I am going to use the long course narrative and fade Matt Wallace. Eric Van Rooyen should be fine. Patrick Rogers, every time I think I have narrowed down Patrick Rogers, every time I think he's going to play well, he just disappears. Every time I write him off, he's in the top 20. I just don't know what to do with Patrick Rogers. But you see all of this chalk up here that I am agreeing with. So we're going to have to try to find some uniqueness somewhere, and I think I can find it for you. But it's not going to be in the 10 or the 9Ks, unfortunately. I will tell you I am avoiding the chalk in Joel Damon and Matt Wallace. A little bit of Patrick Rogers. He's not exactly chalky, but not really going there. In the 8s, Emiliano Grillo, Nikolai Højgaard, Kramer Hickok, Chad Ramey, Akshay Bhatia, Tyler Duncan, Adam Long, Cameron Percy, Fabrizio Zanotti, Michael Kim, and Nick Hardy. Michael Kim is one of the 9 players that has gained both when it's long and when it's windy. I really like Michael Kim this week. You can see he's 9th in my rankings. He doesn't really have a terrible statistic across here. He avoids bogeys. There you go. Now you can see. He avoids bogeys when it's on long courses. His iron play, his distance, his par 3s have been good. I really like Michael Kim this week. I think that'll gain you a little bit of uniqueness, especially if you are wanting to shy away from Cameron Percy. I think Cameron Percy is a good play, but 17% is a whole lot of chalk to eat. Akshay Bhatia, I'm surprised is only at 13%. He played well in Puerto Rico. Now I talk about he's only had a couple of rounds, but they've been very, very bad in the wind. But he played very well in Puerto Rico, so I don't see any reason why he shouldn't play well here either. I like Akshay Bhatia. He's the number 1 in terms of pure analytics. He's getting hurt by the fact that that he's never played this course. Don't want any part of the defending champion Chad Ramey. He's not been playing well. I know he's coming off a decent Players Championship, but even then he faded over the weekend. So I don't want really any part of Chad Ramey. Kramer Hickok, I can take or leave. 16% is a whole lot of ownership on him, but for good reason. He plays the par 4s well. He plays the par 5s extremely well. Doesn't have a whole lot of distance, but still manages to play difficult or long courses well. So I don't mind it, but that's why I wanted to highlight Michael Kim and a little bit lesser to an extent Nick Hardy to avoid some of the chalk in the 8Ks. Moving into the upper 7s, I like Sam Stevens. Again this week, I was pretty high on him at Puerto Rico. Turned out to be a decent suggestion or decent recommendation. Mark Hubbard, it seems like it should fit him. I know he doesn't have the distance, but he's very, very good with wedge in his hand. This seems like it should fit Mark Hubbard. I was very high on him last year, and he bombed out here. So I'm a little bit more cautious on Mark Hubbard. The analytics really, really like him. So take that what you will. I'll probably be very, very cautious. Again, I've talked about Dylan Wu. I'm not going to be using him. Dylan Wu and Joel Damon are my 2 full fades. I know the analytics are seemingly fantastic on Dylan Wu. It's the fact that he has not played well in the wind, and he's not played well on long courses. So I don't want any part of Dylan Wu. Ryan Gerard should be fine, but 16%, pretty significant ownership there. I don't know if I like going to a 16% Ryan Gerard. If you're going on the wind, Scott Piercy and the irons. He didn't play well here in his 2 tries, but with the amount of wind that's here, should be pretty good. I like Harry Hall again. He's got distance. And look at his performance on these long courses and these long course metrics. 22nd in bogeys avoided. He's top 5. Top 5 in hitting greens on long courses. Small sample size, yes, but it's something. I like Harry Hall again this week, and he was pretty good at Puerto Rico. So in the low 7s, I'm ignoring Dylan Wu, full fade. I want to get away from Ryan Gerard. I'm sure I'll have him in a couple of lineups or so. Hubbard should be okay, but man, he was really bad last year. Sam Stevens is fine. 11.5% I think is fair. I really like Sam Stevens as well. Moving into the low sevens. Let's see here. Don't ignore Aaron Baddeley. I know he's at 7,500, but don't ignore Aaron Baddeley. He's one of those 9 players who has gained total strokes when it's long and when it's windy. So don't ignore Aaron Baddeley. He's also number 1 in par 4s. If par 4s do end up mattering a little bit more, he's number 1 in that. He's also very good at putting on past Palom in the very few rounds that we have. Bogeys avoided when it's long. So take a look at Aaron Baddeley. I mentioned Doug Gim. He's been decent at. Was he one of the 9 players? No, there was something that Doug Gim popped on. I can't remember anymore. I think Doug Gim could be all right this week. Nothing stands out about him, but again, par 3 performance. Oh, it was the long par 3s. That's what it was. He's very good at the long par 3s. Hank Lebioda, very good at the long par 3s. I really liked Hank Lebioda this week. Number 1 in par 3s in general, and he was very good at the long ones. But look at his performance on long courses. Top 10 in avoiding bogeys, top 5 in greens on long courses, and for what it's worth, very few rounds, but 2nd in past Palom putting. He's good with wedge in his hand. I really like Hank Lebioda. I will be utterly shocked if he's only at 9.5%, but I'm going to be using Hank Lebioda. Let's see. Elsewhere here, I seem to mention Augusto Nunez all the time, and he seemingly just fails. But the metrics, again, say Augusto Nunez should be pretty good. So whether you want to go with the metrics or with what your eyes have told you that he hasn't been playing well, do what you want. I'll be very cautious because he has burned me a couple times. Take a look at Kevin Chappell. 5th in distance in a course that you have to have some distance. 21st in greens. It's just right off of your screen. He's 21st in greens. Kevin Chappell's the number 1 scorer on par 5s in this field this week. So take a long look at Kevin Chappell. I like him as well this week. Then there are 2 6Ks that I am going to gravitate. Actually, I'm sorry. 1 more in the low 7s. At 7,000 even, I love Kevin Roy this week. Love Kevin Roy. Number 1 in strokes gained approach. He's got enough distance. He's very good with par 3s. He doesn't avoid the bogeys the best, but if bogey avoidance is a statistic that I have erroneously inserted this year, then it won't hurt him. I really, really, really like Kevin Roy. Now, moving to the 6Ks, I think there's a couple players I want to talk to you about that I think should be okay. The first is at 6,900, Austin Eckroat. Again, nothing analytically jumps off the page. He is 3rd in greens when it's long, and he's top 15 with wedges in his hand, meaning proximity 100 to 125. Austin Eckroat's also been pretty darn good in the wind. Sorry, looking at my spreadsheet over here. The reason why he is not one of the 9 players that I highlighted earlier, he does not have 10 rounds in windy conditions or on long courses. He's got 9 rounds in the wind, and he's one of the top performers in the wind. So I really like that about him. He doesn't have very many rounds at all on long courses, but the 4 that he does, he was positive. So take a look at Austin Eckroat at 6,900. I don't hate that. And at 6,800, it's Rafael Campos again. He plays these Caribbean events pretty darn well. He plays them pretty darn well. So take a little bit of a look at Rafael Campos. His main draw is the fact that he plays par 5s pretty well. But I really do like Austin Eckroat. If you are coming down to the 6Ks, I like Austin Eckroat. I would not go anywhere lower than Campos at 68. I don't want any part of anybody anywhere lower than this. But that's what I have for you in terms of the price board for the Corrales. Let's look at some tiers lineups very quickly and then make some classic lineups. In Tier 1 for the Corrales, you have Wyndham Clark and Joel Damon. Well, you see, one's rated first, one's rated 94th. I think you know which one I'm going to take, even if he's the chalkiest person in the field. It's Wyndham Clark, by the way. No, Tier 2, Taylor Pendrith, Thomas Detry, Ben Martin, and Matt Wallace. Taylor Pendrith is very, very interesting because of his length. Thomas Detry is probably going to be the best play. That's a whole lot of chalk to take in the first two tiers, but I think you kind of have to do it. I really, really like Thomas Detry this week. Ben Martin's also a fine play. If you have a stronger feeling on Ben Martin, I don't hate that play, but I think Thomas Detry is the better of the two options. If you're trying to gain some uniqueness, I do like Taylor Pendrith. But I will go with Detry in Tier 2. Tier 3, Eric Van Rooyen, Patrick Rogers, Emiliano Grillo, and Nikolai Højgaard. I always screw that up. I don't like a lot here, to be honest with you. Ugh, gosh. Because of the ball striking, give me Grillo, and I will pray to God that his putter doesn't abandon him. Give me Grillo. I'm not in love with it. Højgaard has some very, very good metrics of the ones that we have, but he doesn't have a lot of them. He'll also be pretty darn unique. I still think I'm going to go Grillo because I know what I'm getting with him, but Højgaard's pretty darn interesting. I'll give you that. Tier 4, Kramer Hickok, Chad Ramey, Tyler Duncan, Adam Long, Cameron Percy, Fabrizio Zanotti, and Michael Kim. I think Hickok's going to be a good play, but I'll go with Michael Kim in Tier 4 for tiers. Tier 5, Nick Hardy, Sam Stevens, Mark Hubbard, Andrew Novak, Dylan Wu, and Ryan Gerard. I really like Ryan Gerard, but I don't like the fact that he's probably going to be pretty chalky. I still want to believe that Mark Hubbard's going to be good here. Don't know if I can take that chance. So I'm going to go Sam Stevens and try to balance out the upside and the ownership. The best play, I think, is probably Ryan Gerard. And I've told you why I'm off Dylan Wu. So the best play, I think, is Gerard. I'm going to go with Sam Stevens to try to gain a little bit of uniqueness. Lastly, Tier 6, saying you'll know, Paul Haley, Russell Knox, Chris Stroud, Carson Young, Harrison Endicott, and Jason Duffner. Woof. Ugh. I don't... Oh, gosh. Ugh. I guess give me Chris Stroud for the ball striking. I guess. There's not a lot I like here. Like, I'm never going to be really a believer in Russell Knox. Chris Stroud also avoids bogeys when it's long. So give me Chris Stroud, but I don't have a strong feeling on anybody in Tier 6. All right. Let's start making some classic lineups and seeing how we can maneuver around a lot of this chalk that is in the price board. Awakens, good to see you in chat. It's been a while. How you been? Norlander, how are we feeling about Norlander? He is rated very, very highly. I didn't really talk about him a lot in the low 7s because there's a few players that I like in the low 7s. But you see, he's in my top 15 in rankings. He hadn't played here. That doesn't really mean anything. There's the Corrales has only happened 4 times, at least 4 times when it's supposed to happen in the PGA Tour schedule. Good ball striker. I do worry a little bit about the distance. This course is 7,700 yards. You do need some distance. And he doesn't have a lot of it. Having said that, he avoids bogeys. And he's the number 1 greens and regulation game player when it's long. So it's a good shout. I don't hate Norlander at all. I do worry a little bit about his lack of distance. But I like the shout. All right. If we're going to try to maneuver around this price board, the most common player right now is Wyndham Clark, and it's chalk that I won't be able to get away from. Love Wyndham Clark this week. The highest ownership down here is around 9.5%. Only because I love Kevin Roy so much, I'm going to use Chris Stroud. And then Hank Lebiota is also getting some love. I'm hoping that this is going to save us enough in the sense that to show your fellow contestants are going Clark and Detry or Clark and Martin. At 7,800, Dylan Wu getting a whole lot of love. Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. So Dylan Wu and Ryan Gerard. And that's leaving a couple hundred on the table, but you see 17.5% projected owned. Yikes, 17.5%. That is gross. I want to go take a shower right now looking at that number. That is awful. Don't want any part of a lineup that is using 4 or even 5 of these or maybe even 3. You've got to find some uniqueness here. And with the fact that myself, I'm very high on Wyndham Clark and Thomas Detry and Ben Martin. That's why I gave you a few of these other names to look at. If your fellow contestants are not going to Wyndham Clark, we'll go Thomas Detry, Ben Martin, and perhaps build a more balanced look. Cameron Percy. Then it's, again, I hate to use the same names, but it is what it is. Dylan Wu and Ryan Gerard. And then at 73 is Lebiota again. So if your fellow contestants aren't going to Wyndham Clark, then they're building something that looks along these lines. 18% projected on, like match in your GPPs. Yuck. It's gross. Don't want any part of that. So if we're going to try to maneuver around all this chalk, you got to choose. You got to decide if you're going to use Wyndham Clark or not. So the first lineup I'm going to make, I'm going to use Wyndham Clark. I'll just try to find my uniqueness elsewhere. I mentioned that there are a couple of players in the sixes that I don't hate. Mainly Austin Eckroat at 69. You can take a look at Rafael Campos as well at 6,800. He plays these Caribbean events pretty well. I really like Austin Eckroat at 6,900. Kevin Roy is also somebody you can consider if you don't like the idea of going into the sixes. Kevin Roy at 7,000 also could be an option to you. Here you got to decide if you're going to go stars and scrubs, or if you're going to try to balance this out. Carson Young. See, he played very, very well at Puerto Rico, but fell off. He does have the distance. The par threes are such a huge component here at Corrales. I'm off of Carson Young for that. They are such a huge, important factor here. They're the most important factor at Corrales. He's not very good at them, and he's not very good in par fives either. Now, he has been very good at the par fours, which are a little bit mitigated here, and he's been very good at hitting greens on long courses. But you've got to score on these par fives, and the par threes are the most important here. I'm not a believer in Carson Young. That's where you and I will differ this week, Awaken, as I'll go with Kevin Roy over Carson Young. I also don't hate Chris Stroud, but we used him in the chalky lineup. So I will use Kevin Roy and try to build like a stars and scrubs-ish. Again, I like Thomas Detry, but that's a whole lot of chalk. So I think Taylor Pendrith is pretty interesting. Pretty interesting at basically half the ownership that Thomas Detry is. Akshay Bhatia is also somebody you could gravitate towards. I mean, it's a little bit higher in projected ownership than I would have thought. Than what I would like. But he showed that he can play these Caribbean-style coastal events. So we'll go Bhatia, and we have 7,400. I mentioned Doug Gim. I don't hate. I really like Hank Lebiota. He's a little bit, on the chalkier end as well. Kevin Chappell at 7,100 is somebody else that I've been gravitating towards thanks to his length. And he's played this event pretty darn well, as you can see here with his course value. But he's 5th in distance, 21st in greens when it's long, and Chappell's the number 1 scorer on par 5s in this field. So there's a lineup that I've been, kind of messing around with the shell of. I will substitute out Clark and go Detry, maybe go Clark and Martin, and then find some more uniqueness elsewhere. But, we were looking at 17, 18%. Now we're at 12.5%. I still don't like 12.5%, but it's a whole lot better than 18%. So there's one idea of a lineup that I've been running around with. And then if we don't go Wyndham Clark, again, I would use Taylor Pendrith. We'll go Thomas Detry. And I really do, now that you brought him up, I do like the Heinrich Norlander look. Looking a little bit closer at his metrics. I will bottom out at Kevin Roy. A little bit chalky at 7,000, but you're going to run into chalk everywhere. I also like Sam Stevens. He'd probably fit here in the pricing. I like Sam Stevens at 7,900. This is 9,100 per player. We could fit Ben Martin if you wanted to. Nicolai Højgaard, if you are willing to believe in the few rounds that we have from him. They've been very, very good. Very, very good. But it's very few rounds. I don't hate it. And then 9,400 is exactly Ben Martin, so we could actually go something to this effect. Be a little bit higher in terms of the projected ownership, but you got Detry and Ben Martin, Heinrich Norlander, thanks to Awaken's suggestion. Somebody I'm really high on who played very well at Puerto Rico, Sam Stevens. Speculative with Nicolai Højgaard. I can't ever say his name correctly. And then Kevin Roy. We'll do one more lineup or take some more looks at players from chat. Again, I'm full fading Joel Damon and I'm full fading Dylan Wu. So those are my bold, suggestions or bold calls for the Corrales. If those two play well, I will struggle. But I'm going to full fade those two, especially Dylan Wu, since he has not played well in the wind and he's not played well on long courses. Let's try to get Michael Kim in here. I haven't had a lineup with Michael Kim, so again, I'll use Wyndham Clark. And then do I really want to go all the way down to Michael Kim? Not really, but could, I suppose. Let's go Michael Kim. And again, feel free to jump in chat if you have players that you want to see or lineup shell. We can go Michael Kim, Nick Hardy, somebody that is the metrics say should be really, really good. He struggled here last year. Matt Wallace, we talked about a little bit. I am a little concerned about his performance on long courses. He's been playing very, very well lately. Yeah, I'm with you on that, P. I do kind of like Nick Hardy this week. Here's the issue with Matt Wallace. Awaken, he's been pretty bad on long courses. He does play par 5s pretty well, but again, this course is 7,700 yards. Now, he has the distance off the tee, so something's not adding up here with the bogey avoidance and the greens on long courses. So, if this sharpens up, or if these two severely poor, terrible metrics start matching his good driving distance, you could be onto something. 15% is a little bit heavy. I've got enough reason to avoid him. Sharp PGA Betting Buddy has Hardy outrights too. I don't have an outright on Hardy. I went with Detry. I really want to bet Wyndham Clark, but he's 9-1. Like I just can't. I can't do that. That's not value. So I got Pendrith and a couple others in terms of outrights. But to finish this lineup up, Michael Kim, Nick Hardy, Sam Stevens. We might have used him. Mark Hubbard, again, I keep wanting to believe Mark Hubbard is going to be good at these style of events. And generally doesn't work out for me. But this lineup, you can easily bottom out at somebody like Harry Hall, who I'm pretty high on. That's leaving 8,000. If you're not big into Mark Hubbard, you can go somewhere else with that. But Mark Hubbard, anybody else? Ryan Gerard, he's just very, very chalky. But 12.5% is some of the lower projected own we've seen, with what I'm fully expecting to be a 30 or 35% owned Wyndham Clark this week. Chesson Hadley. I really thought about Chesson Hadley at the start of my research today. Then I realized that he is just I don't know about Chesson Hadley. Let me bring you back to Fantasy National. And if you have lineup questions, feel free to throw those in chat. I won't stop with the lineups, but with some stuff around specific players, it's just going to be easier to show in Fantasy National. So I'll just come back to the strokes gained page view. Again, I'm just actually, I don't have any filters on. This is just showing the top, or since the start of this calendar year. But let's cover Matt Wallace first. Again, I was mentioning he's just not been good on long courses. I'm going to have to, of course, increase the timeline. Matt Wallace. Yeah, it's very few rounds. I get it, Awaken. I do. And he's played pretty well lately. But, I mean, coming off a top 10 at the Valspar. But that form before that was horrendous. And I'm just very, very scared about not being good on long courses. The fairways shouldn't scare you. These fairways are so massive, even I could hit them. That's saying something. Even I could hit these fairways. So don't be concerned about the fairways. I'm just concerned with his performance on long courses. He was bad at the Arnold Palmer. That's a very difficult tournament, sure. But even the Valero, he really struggled. If we back this up to 2021, it's more the same. Wallace just doesn't seem to play long courses well. But in 2021, it looks like he did. So I might have to eat my words on that. So the Masters made the cut, played really well. Okay, so he was very good at the Valero in 2021. All right, well, I guess recently he hasn't been good at long courses. I don't know. I'm not there, Awaken, just because I default to 2022. I don't like to go back too far. But if you want to go more historical, okay, sure. Coming off the top 10, I guess with Matt Wallace, I'm more of a, all right, show me it again, and I'll believe. Chesson Hadley. Again, this is with long courses, not good. Not good on long courses, and even worse, we'll take a look at the wind. It's not very good for Chesson Hadley in the wind. Because Hadley was somebody I kind of keyed in on to begin my day today, and the alarms started to go off. He's deep red in both long courses and in the wind. So I don't want really any part of Chesson Hadley. Stevens I like. Justin Lauer's kind of interesting as well. If there's any other quick questions on certain players, or if you have a lineup question, I'll go back to Microsoft Excel. But that is my reasoning on why I am off of those two players in particular, Wallace and Hadley. Nick Hardy's been good in the wind. Nick Hardy also okay on long courses, so I don't hate that one at all. Justin Lauer's been very good in the wind. I don't know off the top of my head what he's done on long courses, but I don't hate Justin Lauer. The form is hideous, but wasn't, during this PGA Tour season, he's had 2 top 10s. It seems forever ago, but they're there. And look at the Bermuda. This is a very similar style course, or similar style conditions to the Bermuda. The Bermuda is short. The Corrales is long, but very similar conditions. Velcro speed greens. Højgaard seems like a safe made cut. I don't. In an alternate field event, I don't ever want to say someone is a safe made cut, because I really thought that about Mark Hubbard last year, and that blew up in my face. Having said that, in the few rounds that we have on Nicolai Højgaard, I think I said it right that time. Yes. Small victories. In the wind, it hasn't been good, but he's from the DP World Tour. You have to expect that he would be okay. He's only ever putt on Bermuda. I'm with you, Awaken. If you believe in the metrics, and I'm going to have to take you to Excel again for this. The few rounds that we have, damn it, I'm going to switch the view. The few rounds that we have on Nicolai Højgaard are very good. 4th in distance, top 20 in bogey avoidance, top 35 in greens. Now, we don't have a lot of stats on a lot of things. Mainly, he hasn't been over here in the States in 2023, or at least we don't have the measured rounds from 2023. So he's rising in the world golf rankings. He's a very good player on the DP World Tour. If you are able to get him at 6.3%, I do like that, Awaken. I do like Højgaard, but I am always going to be, especially in an alternate field event, I will never say somebody is a safe cut made. But I do like where your line of thinking there with Højgaard. I do. About to say Mark Hubbard seems like a safe made cut. How about? Well, no. No. That is what prevented me from having a spectacular week last year at the Corrales, because I was so high on Mark Hubbard, had a win bet on him, all of that kind of stuff. And no. I know the vision's skewed, but I will take you to the Corrales from last year. He missed the cut on the number. Zanotti, unfortunately, it's the answer that I have to give anytime there are no statistics. I got nothing. If a person does not have statistics, I got nothing. That is someone I would go elsewhere in the industry, someone who's going to be much more knowledgeable about Zanotti than I am, and I don't want to give you any bullshit answer. I just don't know. Recent form, I'm assuming this is over on the DP World Tour, the good recent form. He played tough events last year. He topped 25 this same event last year, so I guess. But I will not use him because I don't have anything on him. And again, my appeal, or at least what I'm hoping my appeal is being a statistical analyst. And when somebody doesn't have any stats, I can't analyze them. And just, I'd rather tell you straight up that I don't know than to feed you a bullshit answer. So, but I think that is what I have for you all in terms of the Corrales this week. I'll leave you off here with Fantasy National. Just remember what you're looking at is wind. Do you like EVR? Yeah, I don't mind EVR. I am looking to go elsewhere in the 9Ks. Let's see. Let me go to Excel and then. If you're looking for some, damn it, that's the wrong. That was last year's. Yeah, save that. If you're looking for some uniqueness in the 9Ks, sure. I don't hate it. He's generally a pretty good wedge player, although his recent form with wedges hasn't been good. I don't hate it. He's top 5 in par 3s, which are so very, very important here. If you're looking to get away from the Ben Martin Thomas Detry chalk, yeah. But I am comfortable eating this chalk because I'm very confident in these two, which means, like I was confident in Mark Hubbard, these two are going to shit the bed. But I'm very confident in these two, and this is chalk that I'm willing to eat, and I'll find my uniqueness further on down the price board. But if you want to use some of the chalk, this is what I'll say. If you want to use some of the chalk further down the price board, say in a Dylan Wu or a Ryan Gerard or a Cameron Percy, I think EVR would work. Absolutely. I like a lot of what you're thinking, Awaken, with the exception of Matt Wallace and Carson Young. But the Norlander, I really, really like. Højgaard, while I'm not going to call it a safe made cut, I do like your line of thinking on him. Very unique, very unknown, and what little metrics we do have are very good. And then the EVR uniqueness as well in the 9Ks. I will bring you back to Fantasy National for the sign-off. Again, this is windy conditions, moderate and windy conditions since the start of 2022. It's a factor at Corrales. It's always windy. But a very, very fun show this evening, especially for an alternate field event. Love it. Thanks for all the participation. Darnell and P, Awaken, Joey, everybody. It was great. I always love being able to give you my view, right or wrong, statistical analysis for golf, and doing a little bit of gambling with it. Yeah, good luck to all your contests. Let me know in the comments how they go, what kind of lineups you used, any wagers that you put in, because every Sunday I want to be able to shout out members of the community who do well. And don't forget, this Friday we're going to be doing baseball. Baseball starts next week. And since I wasn't able to do a Friday night stream last week, we're going to be doing some baseball this week for Friday night. So if you are interested in DFS baseball, we'll be doing that for the Friday night chill stream. Thanks to everybody who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel. I always appreciate it. You all make it a lot of fun with all the interaction. Love what I do. So thanks for the support. For all of the wagers that you've made this week for the Corrales Puntacana, for all the DFS contests you've entered this week for the Corrales Puntacana, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.